Awesome. Thank you
Yes.
very much, Val, and congratulations, Occupational Health Clinics for Ontario Workers, 30 years. No small shakes, right? That's an amazing legacy, and as many have said before today, but on the shoulders of giants, right? We may be a national center. I'm going to talk about initiatives that we take at regional, provincial levels, but really nationally too. But it's this honor of being able to work with such expertise and, by extension, all of their partners and all of the work that they do and how it unfolds back in. So thanks for this opportunity. And supplying knowledge for activation and action. Well, we've got a little bit of stuff to offer, that's for sure, and let's get right into it. So when we say we're unique, it's not a brag sheet, as it were, but it's more about that we lend a national lens. We interface with all provinces and territories and different forms of industry, region, etc. So the fact that we're into collaboration at a level like that, and also internationally, because you want to go out and find what's happening in the world through our own efforts and through that of partners. Bilingualism is a big deal because we have 2 official languages in Canada, so everything that we're offering. And we're always looking for as tripartite a lens as possible. So we have our own board, even though we're obviously affiliated with government through our Ministry of Labour. Our new minister's in place now as of just the other day. From the Ancaster-Hamilton region, I understand, the new federal minister. The fact that we have this tripartite lens, it gives us opportunity to really have dialogue, as we're talking about today, and all the wonderful successes that have come from that. It's more to do with the fact that you can't ignore any voices, right? That they, in unison and through a whole bunch of effort of consensus-based decision-making, which is so important, as we know, in activism. So in terms of connecting with Canadians, wanted to give you some statistics. No, I don't think they're boring at all. I think they're very important because this is representative of how there's so much outreach going on, and then there's still much more that can be done, because the irony of having 9.2 million people and 12.2 million visits or times that they have come to us even annually, and then the breakdown English French. But think about, we're less than 30% still of the outreach for Canada. So there's still more work and room for improvement, as it were. But think about it, there's ways that we can work together. That's what Val just put the call out there, and I appreciate that, because we're open to any form of dialogue around how we can partner and really maximize and amplify the work that you're doing, that we're doing, because we like to report on it, right? We have different vehicles I'll get into. And the fact that social media has become over the years such a big and important part of that, as well as being at events just like this and having the opportunity of not only seeing you in the room, but realizing that we're capturing this and that we can put it back out there again and help more people, right? And teach them that there's ways and means. And so when we break it all down, there's a wide swath here of places we've been, put it on a matrix, and types of people or groups that we've spoken with or to. We've gotten their inputs and facilitated discussions, and then we put that back into the work that we do. And in terms of the social footprint, with an actual footprint, as it were, with all the little toes representing different types of social channel or outreach, you're seeing how this has really grown from zero, right? A few years ago, what were social channels, as we've joked about the, occurrence of a fax machine. I once trained people on fax machines at the Hamilton Public School Board, because I sat 3 feet away from it, and I was the first one, in. So then people would, hey, can you help me with this? So by virtue of proximity and time, I'm going to teach you how to use. Well, I had to use it too. So, and then eventually a computer on my desk right beside a typewriter, because I've been working that long. And you look at this type of outreach, how it's growing right down to the Instagram channel. And the reason that that is so important is because how many, 100 million devices that exist, and how many million of those alone in Canada, and how many even in Ontario, that every day, and then we're checking them now, and I take no offense to that because it's called life. I had a child call me and I said, I think I'm going to go on and present soon, so just text me what it is that you needed, and if it's not an emergency, don't call back, right? So these are important things that, we recognize that we can use them through social means, and the dialogue change and having the conversation move off of just what is the issue, but what are we going to do about it. So in this campaign that we ran, it's more about the building up of respect and civility and recognizing that violence and harassment and bullying and all of its forms are unacceptable. We talked about zero tolerance today. So having these channels and using them for good, right? Using the powers of having people repost and have commentary. We did have this one social media event, as it were. We're running it on Facebook and had these different cards popping up in Twitter, etc. And we did have an interesting response about like 101 day. And then we had to curate a lot of those responses because that engenders a lot of dialogue around personal experience. And then we have to monitor that, right? And be putting back out as the administrators and really stewards, as it were, of this conversation, that there are some rules and regulations around that too, in the social sphere. But it was really, really good to see that level of response. It goes out on the wire and then all this comes forth. And this had like a 13,000 reach. And it, I said about 100, but when I check again at the end of the whole thing, there are nearly 300 comments off of just these cards. So that tells you there's obviously a need for more dialogue, more intervention, more opportunity for helping people activate this within their own workplaces. So this is giving examples of, we're going to stop it. It's not part of what you're expected to take on. It's negative social interaction, and then showing different work scenes, as it were. So there's just one example of activism in the modern sense, right? And in terms of the history of what we're doing as it moves along, because I think we're in our 42nd year of existence, Act of Parliament 1978, and current government of the day, plus other factions, including labor movement and employers, wanting to see a center to exist that could have a board of various representation. And so people can call us confidentially 5 days a week. The lines are open 8:30 to 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. And this is the breakdown again of who we're servicing. But let's take a look at that middle at 66%, so like over 65%, say that they're going to use the information they garnered, right? They're going to take it back into the workplace condition or context. And you see how the users of the service have an interesting breakdown too. So the fact that I'm very excited when you see an employer audience too, that they're taking this on. We get calls from all forms of management, supervisory, worker, labor representation, health and safety practitioner, all forms of industry. So this is how we report out in terms of the fact sheets that live on the website as well as the app. And I'm looking at my colleague Alan Powell, who helped with the team instrumentally as we continue to roll on. This was statistically captured as of the last fiscal, but you're seeing that from the website itself and then moving over to the app, which is in hand, as well as the website, that there is a proportion, a movement of people like very interested in pulling this information down. I went to an event in Thunder Bay, and the individual that used our fact sheet didn't know we were going to be there, but they very prescriptively told me, oh no, I called in and I got permission to use this fact sheet. Like there was a reverence to it that I said, hey, no, like we're very on the ground. We're so glad that that's your actual purpose, right? To pull it down, use it in your presentation, use it as part of your work. That's the whole purpose, because it activates that change. They have facts, they have credible resource to pull from. And again, people being able to further promote it through electronic means, that we're saying to other safe work associations or other groups, let's put that information out there that they can come into contact with us. And so we created badges. That was at the request of organizations trying to promote internally or within their industry grouping, etc. We move it along to things that we do to help educate. And we created a whole series of awareness courses, and parallel we also, because we are both funded and have some cost recovery elements to what we do, probably at an almost 50-50 split, that I'm illustrating here, that we have this range of accessibility in terms of the free, but then also there's a propensity to purchase because people are trying to make that part of their education and training, but not as e-courses go, make it a wholesale training effort. We realize that adult learning principles, being in proximity of other people and having dialogue, equally important. And these are just the educational bases of having people have tools to start out with and look at the content so they can affirm that, yes, this is a workplace conditional issue. Let's do something about it. So these are screen captures from a few that we've produced. This one was in partnership through various means, and it's to do with how to illustrate and use new technology and help it be that much more accessible to people. We did customized work with various groups in terms of this particular province with Northwest Territories and Nunavut. They wanted to certify supervisors, right? But they wanted to do it through some adult learning / online means. So this is what we came up with them. And back up north again, there's one of the latest in a series of e-courses for young or new workers, realizing their vulnerability, realizing that they need access to things that are relevant to their experience in the workplace. So there's more graphical or cartoon elements. I know my 16-year-old would think this is pretty special, right? Because it's like, hey, that's relating to me on how I would expect to see content, how I would digest it. And then just examples of our fact sheets popping up where people can just search right in there, and they also have the categories. I was speaking with Terry earlier about the categories, having them all broken down into actual workplace hazards and conditions so that you can easily find them and access them and get them. And you can see how the iOS store and the Google Play were promoting those buttons to say, hey, you can come get this stuff over on the app as well. And then when people are doing training itself, I've been using some of these myself lately in some workshops that we're doing, and these cards are activation tools in and of themselves because they're dialogue starters, and then they kickstart into the subject matter, wherein you might not jump into the deep end on certain other things. If this is handed out and we can have a discussion about these points, do we agree or disagree? What else do we need? What's missing? It forms a whole new way of addressing an issue, and maybe even breaks down the stigma around certain things to do with mental health or violence and the reporting of such, and how we're going to really address that psychological health and safety is equitable to all other hazard. This is important work, right? And that it's fundamental from what we hear when we get the phone calls, when we get the emails, when we work with Safe Work Association partners. They help feed back into all of this possibility. And then we don't want to forget about the research. So we make microsites or portals like Healthy Minds at Work that synthesize and curate all the publicly accessible research that's out there, and how it can, again, be easily downloaded or accessed so that people can reference things and ensure that they're on the right track. And this is another site that runs in parallel, Healthy Workplaces. It's broken down by groups of employer, worker, practitioner, and then topics and resources, because then we just want to path people into what door they need to go through, and then they can willingly look at any other doorway and find out what's there. A couple of more recent ones, gender, work, and health, and infectious disease. Actually, that one's an update because when the original SARS and flu epidemics were happening, we produced a site and downloadable toolkits, etc., to help all forms of concern. And that was, I guess, almost 16 years ago now, around 16 years ago when that first happened. Lest we forget about partnerships and collaborations, Occupational Health Center, occupational OCAL, let's just say that, and then the occupational disease in terms of prevention, this important tool and resource that was done in full collaboration with the ideas and the inputs of OCAL, and that we end up helping frame it in, get the messaging out there, and then the content itself easily accessible, again, curated. So these are things that I know that there's some information here at the event that you can pick up. And then just to further highlight that when we're talking about, say, mental health in the workplace, and we have a portal. We're trying to show all different types of tools and resource, and there's Stress Assess down in the one quadrant there, in balance to other things like the national standard or other tools like Guarding Minds, etc. But we're ever so proud because we have worked on Stress Assess with OCal, and how John O'Dyke and Valerie Wolf had brought forth the notion of let's like artificially intelligently make it into what it is, and it goes again off of the mental injury toolkit tool group and all of their efforts, and it gets built back into this type of format, multi-step, personal, workplace editions. People have a chance to try it in a personal fashion so that they can understand it for workplace application. But I know John's going to talk about some things around that. Just wanted to articulate how the richness of this relationship has brought the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety forward, and how when we work in partnership and we learn from each other, that there's the potential for change at such an incredible level, and in terms of the workplaces and their conditions, all the things that we can affect collectively. So thank you for that. And this moment, I wanted to make it more infomercial-like, and that we can stay on agenda timing, but thank you. Thank you for today. And congratulations.